classical theory of money demand, which is Irving Fisher's quantity theory of money demand, Cambridge theory of money demand, and Keynes' liquidity preference theory. In Irving Fisher's quantity theory of money demand, there are three mode theory, which is velocity of money and equation of exchange, quantity theory, and quantity theory of money demand. Basically, Irving Fisher's quantity theory is a theory created by American economist named Irving Fisher. It is described the relationship between inflation and both real and nominal interest rate. Real interest rate equal the nominal interest rate minus the expected inflation rate. When the amount of money in circulation increases, other things will not change. In the velocity of money in equation of exchange, it is explained about the link between the total quantity of money and the total amount of spending. When all the money were expensed, it must be equal to the total of revenue. Next is the quantity theory. In the quantity theory, it is stated that the velocity is fairly constant in the short run. Transform the equation of exchange into the quantity theory of money, which states that nominal income is determined slowly by movement in the quantity of money. Last but not least is quantity theory of money demand. In quantity theory of money demand, the quantity theory of money tells us how much money is held for a given amount of aggregate income. In this theory, we know that public hold money for the transaction purposes.
Cambridge theory of money demand, the quantity theory of money produced by Cambridge Economics. This explanation of this subtopic is called as cash balance approach. According to this approach, the people only spend a part of their total income at a particular point of time, not the total income. They like to hold only that part of money or the part of income as a cash which they want to spend on goods and service to satisfy their wants. Besides, the relationship between demand of money and supply of money has been presented by the Cambridge economists in the form of an equation. As you can see here, there is three main economists of Cambridge, which are Professor Marshall, Professor Pigou, and Professor Robertson. The equation by Professor Marshall. Professor Marshall and his followers use the following equation: M equal to KPY, where M is supply of money, PY is total demand of money, and K is part of total demand of money is held. From Professor Pigou, as you can see, the equation is M equal to KPR, or P equal to M over KR. For Robertson equation is M equal to KPT, where M is the total volume of money, P is the price level, T is total of goods and services to both, and K is the proportion of P. This is the graph of Cambridge cash balance approach, where x-axis measured the nominal national income, PY, and y-axis measured the demand of money, MD. The slope is equal to K. From the graph in the slide, we can see that demand for money in the Cambridge cash balance approach is a linear function of nominal income. This cash balance of theory of demand for money emphasizes on the function of money as a store of value or wealth. The equation of Cambridge focuses on the money demand instead of money supply. It is the demand in holding the cash balance for transactions and precautionary motive. They focus on the analysis on the factor that determine individual demand for holding cash balances. So, they view that individuals' demand for cash balance is proportional to the nominal income. The portion of money supply will be held for the convenience and security of having cash on hand. This is what K represents as, which is a portion of nominal income. Wealth also play a role in this theory, but it is omitted from the equation for simplicity. Thus, according to the approach, aggregate demand for money can be expressed as MD equal to KPY.
The third theory is the Keynes liquidity preference theory. It is developed by John Maynard Keynes to explain on the relationship between the quantity of money the public wish to hold and the interest rate. In transactionary motive, people prefer to be liquid, which means they need to have sufficient cash for daily expenses. Meanwhile, firms have high demand for liquidity to cover their short-term obligations. So the amount of liquidity desired depends on the level of the income. The higher the income, the more money is required for increased spending. Second motive is the precautionary motive, which explains on the demand for money to cover unforeseen expenditures such as an accident or health emergency. So when the income level increase, the precautionary motive for money demand also increase, which has a positive relationship. Meanwhile, the third motive is the speculative motive. It explains on demand to take advantage of future changes in the interest rate or bond prices. So normally, people will buy bond when they expect interest will decrease and price increase in the future. So this speculative motive depends on the interest rate. From this three motifs, we can conclude the money demand by combining all these three motifs. So the liquidity preference function is represented by this equation, whereby money demand over price is positive to y. It means that when real income increase, transaction and precaution motives also increase. So when interest rate rise, people hold lower amount of money, which resulted in the rate of turnover of money is higher. This is the Keynes liquidity preference theory diagram. To determine the interest rate, it depends on the demand for money and the supply of money. So in this diagram, DOM is the total amount of money supplied by the central bank. So at point E, the demand for money becomes equal to the supply of money. So at this point, the equilibrium interest rate is determined. So when rate of interest increase, supply of money will exceed the demand for money. People will purchase more securities. Hence, the price of the securities will rise and the interest rate will fall until demand for money becomes equal to the supply of money. This is the further explanation from what I've just explained just now.
Friedman's modern quantity theory of money developed by Milton Friedman. He said about money demand is a function of wealth and the return of other asset relative expected return on money. He also recognized that people want to hold a certain amount of money, balance, or income not to be used, same as Keynes. From this slide, you can see the Friedman formula. They are using MD per P, that stands for demand for real money. This slide is based on the formula. So MD have a negative relationship with relative asset rate of return. Permanent income is positive relationship with MD, which is it's more stable than price fluctuate. Let's focus on the MD fluctuation in long run, which is stated that demand will not have large portion on increase or decrease rate compared to permanent income in long run business cycle. Also, return of money can be seen through service that bank provide. More money lended, MD will rise in circulation. So when expected return higher in bond, share, equity, inflation, the demand of the money will be decreased. So it influenced by two factors. First, service provided by bank. Second, interest payment on money balance. On this slide, we're gonna discuss about distinguish between Friedman and Keynesian theories. So Friedman's consider the multiplied rate of returns and consider the relative return to be important. It views the permanent income more important than current income in determining the demand of money. It also views that money and goods and substitute. Friedman more stable than Keynes is considered in his money demand function. In his money demand function is about permanent income stables. Spread return also stable since return would tend to rise or fall all at once and cause the spread remains same. Friedman's model change in interest rate have little and no impact on money demand. If the terms effective money demand are stable, then money demand will be stable and velocity will be predictable.